Wait a minute, this isn't Stardew Valley. No, this is Cult of the Lamb. Cult of the Lamb has quickly become one of my favorite games, so I set out on the ultimate task to 100% the entire game. And to do so requires me to form and grow a cult so enticing that even the gods will have no choice but to join my cause. I must venture out into the roguelike world to slay the bishops of the old faith, and I must clean a lot of poop. It's not an achievement, but it's something I do a lot of. Our journey started with a solemn walk. The long path led up to the bishops of the old faith, and it seems that I was to be their sacrificial lamb. As they yammer on, let me introduce you to Reii, Hecate, Kalamar, and Shibura. My new victim, the villain's 2-hour story. Because as I was moments from death, reality switched and suddenly I was standing before an entirely new entity. The one who waits was giving me a second chance at life, with a price, to start a cult in its name. So I agreed, but I won't be saying the one who waits all the time, so I will be referring to him as Little Dork. The red crown came upon my fluffy head and I was a new lamb, ready to take on the world and delve into the unproblematic role of running a cult. Upon returning to the sacrificial plate, I burst free and started my reign by fighting my capture's minions and escaping. I then came across Reii. As someone who once held the red crown, he was to be my mentor. But I kinda destroyed his fire, so I hope he doesn't need that later. I wasn't quite free yet though, enemies still blocked my way out, but eventually I did find the exit. Reii met me at the next area, telling me that rescuing this poor innocent creature from sacrifice would mean that I would have my first cult member. So I did exactly that. And finally I escaped to freedom. I then got to choose a difficulty, and since I have previously played this game before, I decided to play it on hard this time, just for an extra little challenge. Surprisingly, I don't actually regret this decision. I met up with Reii, who was going to walk me through the beginner stages of running a cult. First on the list was to indoctrinate my first follower, who I named Biscuit. And I made Biscuit go and chop trees. I joined him to gather materials so that I could build a cooking fire by Reii's request, which I built up nearby. With the knowledge of feeding my flock locked away in my fluffy brain, Reii asked me to build a shrine, and gave me the huge task to slay all 4 bishops of the old faith on behalf of our new favorite being, Little Dork. So with not a lot to do at home base, I explored. Biscuit and I used the power of friendship to open the door to Darkwood, and I headed out into the lands of Old Faith in search of more gold, followers, and our first bishop. I picked up my sword and I started going to town on these wooden dummies. Look, I have played before and wood is pretty hard to come by early on, so bashing these dummies is a good thing, I swear. Although it does take a while. With every new area, there's usually a certain amount of enemies to slay before you can move on, and I'll be making sure to clean up each area for resources before moving on. Unless you come upon something like this. I met a character named Clownneck who introduced me to the tarot cards. Making a choice between 2 cards and drawing one will give me certain buffs, like more health or debuffs to enemies, things like that. And as my tarot card collection grows, so will the chance for better cards with better attributes. Continuing on, I went about slaying more minions and monsters that I came across, until Reii made a surprise appearance.
Hi, how are you?
And I have a good feeling he wasn't too happy to see the little lamb he put to the blade running around with the red crown. At the end of the first section, I get a chest full of gold and a chance at more rare loot. Then the crusade continues, but you kinda get to pick and choose where you go, kind of like a choose your own adventure book. Just more culty. So between stone and food, I chose food. I picked some berries and eventually moved on to the final level of the crusade. I'll tell you what, those dummies got what was coming to them. I fought my way through more waves of enemies waiting for me throughout Darkwood. I got to draw another tarot card from Clownneck, a card that lets me deal poison damage. And yes, always collecting resources from the world too. Until I finally came across the boss room, and right in front of me I witnessed Reii curse the red crown and turn one of his own followers into a monster. dodging attacks left, right, and center, and with the help of the poison damage tarot card, I made short work of the foul creature. I saved the poor soul that Reii had used, returning him to my cult, and was rewarded with a choice of resources and a chest full of gold. With a successful first crusade under my belt, I returned home to Biscuit a hero. Reii was also waiting my return, ready to aid in my cult growing endeavors. So I indoctrinated Hugh into the cult and built a shrine per Reii's request. This is so my followers can pray in the name of the Lamb and generate devotion. Reii gave me another follower to indoctrinate, so I welcomed Eugene to the cult and got him to worship at the shrine. I changed Hugh's priorities from chopping trees to worshipping in order to generate devotion quicker, and I took over the manual labor in the meantime. Shortly after, I returned to collect the devotion and I got my first divine inspiration. Now I can use these divine inspirations to unlock new buildings and shrine upgrades as my cult grows. But for now I unlocked the temple. The temple I built up with the help of Biscuit near the entrance. Reii explained the temple is used to preach sermons and perform rituals, staples of any good cult. He then educated me on the importance of faith. Let it get too low and my followers may start dissenting and leave the cult. And we can't have that happen now, can we? So I did preach my sermon and I preached it well and good. Hugh, Biscuit, and Eugene were forcibly enlightened by my bars. Sorry. Sermons also give me strength and faith, which I can use to upgrade my weapons, health, and curses on crusades. However, back outside, Reii was gone, and it seems I was now left to my own vices. I waited around for a bit to gather more devotion from my shrine and eventually got another divine inspiration. This let me unlock sleeping bags for my followers to sleep in. They're a bit flimsy, but they'll have to do for now. I was on my way back to Darkwood after that. I had a task to find a commandment stone fragment and I wanted to know what the heck they did. This time my crusade began with an axe, but I don't think a change in weapon will stop the wooden dummy massacre.
Oh my god!
The run was going according to plan for a bit, until Reii showed up again, still clearly annoyed that this little lamb was running around messing up his crib. So he sent waves of enemies my way, hoping they'd take me out for him. Easy pickings for a stubborn little lamb like myself. I continued forward, eventually running back into Reii. He passed on a message from our dear friend Little Dork that we've earned a new crown ability, Curses. Fervor is earned by striking down non-believers and acts as ammunition for curses. Curses can range from tracking missiles to possessing attacks, all the way to ripping up the earth and sending ghosts to attack enemies. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For now, my crusade continued to a wood collecting area. If I haven't said it enough, wood is very precious. And as night fell, I ran into an area where enemies' health is halved, but I received double damage in return. Luckily, I got to draw the Rabbit's Foot tarot card from Clownneck, and right after I came across a wise-sounding creature called Haro, who, let me be honest, was spitting insane amounts of wisdom. What befell this pantheon? Alas, 'tis the nature of beasts to forget, and of gods to be forgotten. This might be Shakespeare reincarnated. Alas, I put together my first commandment stone and moved forward. Charging headfirst into the final area, I mowed through more non-believers, drew the gifts from below tarot card from Clownneck, and headed into the heretics' chambers. This crusade's boss fight was certainly a step up from the last one. There were more attacks to dodge, and not to mention the fact it jumps all over the place. I put my newfound curse ability to the test as well, helping me whittle down its health. Valafar met its match, however, and I sent the poor soul inhabiting the creature back to the cult. For my noble efforts, I got wood, gold, and another commandment stone piece, all before returning home. Once I was back, I ran straight to the temple to perform my daily sermon. Yes, I should have indoctrinated my new follower because I need 4 points for another upgrade, but I'd like to not talk about it if you don't mind. Dougie was welcomed into the cult shortly after. I got another divine inspiration and used it to unlock the farm plot for future farming. And I got to declare my first of many doctrines with the commandment stone. These are permanent upgrades I get to make towards the livelihood of my cult. Usually you have to choose between two opposing doctrines, but for the first one we unlocked our first ritual, the bonfire ritual. Reii suddenly popped up informing us that to perform these rituals we need the bones of our enemies. How gratifying. Before leaving to gather bones of the non-believers for sadistic ritualistic purposes, I made my followers some berry bowls and cleaned up my first poop. You know, there's a side to running a cult that no one will ever tell you about, and it's this. Armed with a dagger, my third crusade into Darkwood began meeting a new enemy. You can't kill it, you just have to try real hard not to get whacked on the head. In return for more wisdom from our friend Haro, I destroyed the Owl's camp for resources. It seemed fair to me. Shortly after, I had a run-in with 3 of the 4 bishops. Apparently, word had gotten out that a lamb was running rampant, so they wanted Leshy to deal with it. Having not learned his lesson from last time, I bowled through the waves of enemies sent out after me. After drawing a tarot card from Clownneck, I pushed on to a question mark area. The choice between a diseased heart and a tarot card was pretty easy to make. I then saved another creature on the verge of sacrifice, sending them back home for me to indoctrinate later. And finally, it was on to the last dungeon. While I'm adventuring, I just want to take some time to explain that some achievements won't be popping up, because I already have them from a previous playthrough. However, you can be rest assured that I am keeping track of the big ones, and the ones I haven't gotten yet. I promise. Before I knew it though, I was already at the boss room, and taking on this crusade's final monstrosity. I was patient, seeking out opportunities to deal damage in between attacks, and making use of a curse that rips the ground open and spawns tentacles. It was no match for a lamb like me though. It fell to my pure skill and luscious wool, and I sent the creature back home for indoctrination. I accepted my rewards and thought I was headed straight for home, but little Dork wanted a quick check-in with the old lamb. He made it very clear not to fall into complacency when dealing with followers. They are to use it as advantage. Let them empower me and bend them to my will. He gave me the power to read their minds and sent me on my way. What a super wholesome and light conversation topic. Back at home, I welcomed Bobo into the cult alongside Jeff. Biscuit was after my attention, but I actively ignored him for devotion. Turns out he thought I should give the cult a name. What name shall I give to my cult to grow under, I say? I think I shall call it the Cult of Penning. It has a nice ring to it. Oh my god, give me a break. With that divine inspiration, I unlocked the farming bundle for all my farming needs, and worked fast to provide sleeping bags for the followers without one, and gave out necklaces because hey, that's important too. With sufficient bedding now in place, I passed the night away with more manual labor. As the sun came up on day 4, I began work on a small farm. With all these new recruits, I'll need to start feeding more and more hungry followers. But I was interrupted by Hugh wanting me to clean up poop, and Biscuit asking for a grassy gruel meal. So yes, I did clean up the poop. I also made Biscuit his grassy gruel meal. The farmland was put on hold in favor of another sermon in the temple, where I got to unlock Bane weapons for my crusades. Weapons that have a chance to deal poison damage. And I got to put those bones to good use in my first bonfire ritual. I'd say it went down pretty well actually. Ratau popped by again to educate me on the follower loyalty. If I increase their loyalty, I'll be able to gain commandment stone pieces and extra devotion from them. Ratau then insisted I visit him at his home over at the Lonely Shack. Before I could visit though, I put my newfound ability to bless my followers a go. It gives them a slight increase in loyalty. But hey, some is better than none. Man, that sounds like something Haro would say. I was able to unlock the body pit from a divine inspiration shortly after, something I hope I won't have to use in the near future, and made some progress on the farmland by building up a ring of farm plots around the station, and planting down some berry bush seeds with fertilizer, thanks to the release of my followers' feces. I guess something good can come from cleaning poop. For a minute, I chucked on the chef's hat to make a few meals for my fellow panning supporters and headed on out to visit my mentor at the Lonely Shack. Ratau insisted on playing a game of Knucklebones with me, but first I had to acquire this big gift just lying on the floor. Knucklebones is pretty simple. You match numbers on your own side to multiply the number, you match numbers with your opponent to knock out theirs. Highest number of points wins. Being a seasoned veteran, I thought I'd have a good chance and, well, yeah, kinda lost. No matter, I went back in for a rematch and smoked that little rat's ass. For my victory, I received a tarot card, and he even put out a little shrine for me. Isn't that sweet? Back home, Biscuit brought up some concerns about Hugh being a spy. Just some classic midnight banter. I did give him the big present because he is my OG cult member, and with a bit of charm from a lamb's blessing, he gained a level and I got my first commandment stone fragment from a follower. Not to mention a divine inspiration, which I used to unlock the cult 2 upgrade. A bigger and better shrine? Look at us go, nailing this whole running a cult thing. I questioned Hugh on Biscuit's behalf as everyone woke up the next morning. He seemed pretty innocent. Biscuit wasn't so convinced. Never to mind, I had a sermon to perform and you bet it was a damn good one at that. So good in fact, it gave me enough faith to unlock the Curse of the Horde upgrade. Then I got to declare my first real doctrine for the cult. My first doctrinal decision was between murder or an ascension ritual. I went for the ascension ritual. It sounds a lot less ruthless. Happy with how my cult was doing, I set out for another adventurous crusade. Upon entering Darkwood, Leshy was waiting for me. He was ready to put it all on the line, and this crusade would lead me right to the heretic himself. So I grabbed my weapon, I grabbed my curse, and I headed out to put an end to Leshy's reign on Darkwood. Between clearing the hordes of enemies, I drew an increased chance for a critical hit tarot card, and found my way to the end of the dungeon. The path I chose took me to a follower I could buy off Helob, which I did. This feels a little unethical, I'm just putting that out there. But hey, a follower's a follower. I soon left after destroying all of his belongings because, hey, that seems pretty fair. I then ran into this dissenting creature. All I had to do was to say the right thing. And the right thing is what I said. After that, it was on to the final dungeon. And the first room I entered blessed my little cotton socks. Chests full of gold and a new tarot card to add to the collection. The rest were bashing more enemies, picking up a new weapon from Kudai, and coming across the fisherman, who invited me to visit Pilgrim's Passage when I have the time. Before I knew it, however, I was making my way up to Leshy. And let me tell you, he's got some crazy faithful followers. Ooh, now that is one ugly looking worm. Faced against a bishop, I took my time to begin with, learning the attack patterns and thinning out the smaller creatures to give me more room. Eventually, I started whittling down Leshy's health, slowly but surely bringing it down between all the weaving and dodging. More enemies spawned in, so I got rid of them and went back to my priority number 1, who had a few more attacks now. My health was slowly being picked away at, and Leshy was becoming more and more unpredictable. Enemies were everywhere, and unfortunately, I met my first demise. All the more gut-wrenching when you see how much health he had left. Luckily for me, Little Dork was ready to pick me back up when all had seemed lost. So if he has one redeemable quality, I guess it's that. My followers thought my death made me weak. That's a real big hit to the ego right there. But before I could go and seek revenge, I had to take care of a few things back home. With a divine inspiration, I unlocked the shelter upgrade. I added Sir Hans to the cult, and right after that we welcomed Quincy as well. I preached another sermon to my followers and cleaned a lot of poop, to the point where my followers may have gotten sick. Oh, I love this job. I then cooked a few berry bowls to keep the members happy, and supervised in case someone had to go again. I gave blessings to everyone around the camp, and then it was finally time for revenge. I nearly threw it all away in the first dungeon, finishing it with half a heart. I chose the rightmost path back up to Leshy, which brought me past Monch, who increased the loyalty of any follower I wished. I very carefully made my way through another dungeon, thankfully making it out on the other side with more hearts to my name. Helob sold me another follower for 100% off, so it was free. Not that I'm complaining, but you run a terrible business, Helob. By then, I had finally made it back to Leshy's dungeon. I was careful not to take any unnecessary damage on the way to the bishop, and I arrived face to face with Leshy once again, with less health maybe, but with a newfound confidence. I recognized the same attack patterns and knew exactly how to deal with them. I gradually drained Leshy's health, dodging the attacks and rolling in to get a few hits before scattering away. I got the final hit on him and Leshy went down like a sack of bricks. As horrifying as this may seem, I took the beating heart of a heretic. I know, but it gets me more crown ability, so I'm sure it's in my best interests. I gathered up my rewards and headed through the bishop's door to head home. Little Dork wanted a little catch up to tell me Leshy was slaying. Yeah man, I know. I was there. It was a ticker tape parade kind of welcome back at home base. My cult were thriving thanks to my accomplishments. After blessing my followers and reaping the rewards of loyalty, I used a divine inspiration to unlock the lumberyard. I let Wanda, the new recruit, loose amongst the cult, fixed up some of the beds, and built my first lumberyard, which lets a follower gather wood until it's destroyed. Over in the temple, I preached a life-changing sermon unlocking Might of the Devout, which increases the starting level of weapons on a new crusade. With the Heart of the Heretic, I unlocked the Omnipresence ability, allowing me to return to the base at any time during a crusade. And my second doctrinal decision was made between increasing work speed or increasing devotion generation. I opted for the faithful trait just because devotion is actually just more important to me right now. Back outside, I was gaining loyalty levels all over the place, giving me another divine inspiration, which I used to unlock the missionary building. But I couldn't avoid famine any longer. Dipping into orange is cutting it pretty close. So I picked away at my berry bushes, replacing them with more as I went, before cooking up a feast of berry bowls for everyone. And with all of this devotion to my wonderful cult around me, I was able to unlock the scarecrow for my farmland. I then built up 3 decorations for Wanda's amusement, took the loyalty from her, and knocked those bad boys right back down. Birds stealing crops are just as much of a problem in Cult of the Lamb as they are in Stardew Valley, so a scarecrow is essential. And so are beds. Sorry for leaving you without one, Quincy. There was a lovely morning sermon to start day 9. I had enough faith to unlock Fervor of the Righteous, which increased the amount of fervor I could hold. Then Biscuit interrupted more farm plot building to ask if I could fetch him flowers from Darkwood. To be frank, I couldn't be bothered, so I said no. I was building more farm plots because our little cult was growing by the second, and the last thing I need is them all dying from hunger. I continued expanding the base by unlocking and building the demonic summoning circle. This thing turns my followers into little demons that follow me around on crusades. Oh yeah, and I cleaned up more poop. The fisherman was still fresh in my mind, so for the first time I popped by Pilgrim's Passage. The fisherman insisted I try to catch a fish, so I set myself up and caught myself a fish. Not satisfied, he wanted me to catch a few more special fish for him. He did give me a tarot card, so I guess that's an excuse for the fact that his lips look like a funky mohawk, yet his nose and his mustache sit on his back, I think? This fish anatomy isn't really adding up for me. So I fished, my Stardew fishing skills being put to the test yet again. Every time I caught a special fish, I'd hand it over to the fisherman, and in return, I'd get part of a holy talisman. I'll explain what they do soon. However, the fish dried up, and unfortunately, I was out one fish, so I'd have to come back later on. Back at the cult of all things panning, I fixed up some collapsed sleeping beds, cleaned more poop, accepted Barry, an elderly cult member, into our own following. In the interest of Jeff's moral compass, I gave a glorious morning sermon and unlocked 3 more curses for future crusades. And I had to make a doctrinal decision between a belief in sacrifice or a belief in the afterlife. And because I will be needing to sacrifice a few cult members for an achievement later on, it was a pretty easy choice to make. A busy morning for a cult leader like myself can only get busier. I had to harvest some berry bushes to provide more food for my followers, and I unlocked the stone mine. But ironically, I had focused so much on wood, I had kinda neglected to get any stone. That was nothing to Wanda asking me to make them a meal of poop. Wanda did get her meal of poop, but at what cost? As night fell, I quickly assembled a couple more sleeping bags to meet follower demands and headed back out to Pilgrim's Passage. Surprisingly, the first fish I caught was the last fish the fisherman was looking for. I handed it over to him and I got my final talisman piece. And suddenly it was day 11. There were a few things to take care of this morning, like harvesting more berries, building up my first stone mine, blessing the followers, and preaching the daily sermon, which gave me access to unlock another half a heart on crusades. My holy talisman let me unlock a new fleece too, so I decided on the white fleece of the fates, which draws 4 tarot cards at the start of a crusade, but none can be drawn after that. Unlocking all the fleeces is another achievement, so we'll be looking out for more talismans as we adventure onwards. Outside the temple, Barry disclosed that his days were short, so there's only one way to deal with that. I also declared the feasting ritual doctrine, which is super useful when you're low on food but your flock is hungry. Speaking of crusades, I was ready to get back out into the lands of the old faith and run amok in the next land to chase down the second bishop. With the power of friendship, my followers and I got the door to Anura open, and I went straight to it. My tarot cards were drawn, and those wooden dummies got what was coming for them. Anura is a very similar place to venture through as Darkwood, however it does come with a fresh set of enemies. I happened upon Hecate, the Bishop of Anura, on my journey. She was furious at the felling of her younger brother. So furious, she started playing dirty, and Jeff paid for it in the price of starvation. I could head home to help poor Jeff. I did unlock the ability after all, but I pushed on, quickly securing a new follower for the cult, and finishing off the first of 3 Anura mini-bosses without taking damage, I might add. Lil Dork brought me over to his realm for a quick reminder of the work we still had to achieve, pointing out the fact that once all the bishops are slain, he'll be free again. I unlocked the sacrifice of the flesh ritual after our chat, very important for the achievement to sacrifice 10 followers. But we'll worry about that later. For now, my cult needed tending to. Luckily, I got back in time to stunt Jeff's hunger pangs. Quincy was pleased I cooked so many meals, blessings were handed out to all, and with some divine inspiration, I unlocked the refinery and another level of cult buildings. The refinery is important because it allows my followers to consecrate raw materials like wood, stone, and gold into advanced materials. I'll need advanced materials for cult buildings and upgrades to existing buildings soon. But I welcomed George to the cult soon after, along with another new member, Zeth. And during temple time today, I preached another daily sermon as well as declared the extort doctrine. This allows me to extort my followers out of a bit of gold every day. Let's be real, you can't get away with being a cult leader without a few questionable morals. To wrap up the day, I upgraded a few sleeping bags to shelters and cleaned, you guessed it, a lot of poop. As we rolled into day 13, I found myself flexing my green thumb a bit, picking berries ripe for harvest. This morning's sermon let me unlock vampiric weapons that have a chance to heal me when taking out the non-believers. Outside, Quincy was insistent on being choice number 1 for a sacrificial ritual. It'd be my pleasure. Hold your horses though. First, I unlocked the outhouse building so that my followers had somewhere other than the outskirts of the base to poop, but that requires wooden planks, so lucky I had a refinery. With the cult of panic sufficiently taken care of, it was time for another crusade through Anura. On my journey, I ran into Hecate again, joined by her siblings Kalamar and Shimura. I refused to bow, being the stubborn little lamb I am, so Hecate turned all the crusade areas into dungeons. These mushroom people I also came across told me to go and visit Spore Grotto. I'll keep that in mind, and I don't really want to talk about what happened next. Thanks to my stubborn determination, this crusade's length was drawn out quite a lot by the extra dungeons. What's even worse is that the mushroom people really got the last laugh. Maybe it was complacency, maybe it was just because I'm a little bit dumb, but the dungeon boss really caught me off guard, and I was martyred for the second time. Little Dork, we really have to stop meeting like this, my friend. Morale was low back at home, understandably so. I hoped a quick blessing to my followers before bed may raise it a little bit. I also unlocked the Demonic Summoning Circle 2 upgrade. I may want to start using that soon, looking at my current track record. Turning to dusk, everyone was heading to bed. But who needs sleep when you can hear the blessed word of the Lamb, am I right? And I declared a marriage ritual doctrine. I can't wait to find true love. Temple time finished with Quincy living out his sacrificial dreams. He got his wish, and I'm one follower closer to that achievement. Also, I unlocked weapon heavy attacks. Okay, now everyone go to bed while I prepare breakfast. Dougie waited very patiently for me to finish building the cult's first outhouse the following day, and just ignores their throwing up at poop on the ground.
Oh my god.
Dougie really just wanted to tell me that he's getting old, and I appreciate that, but I've got a little bit of a situation unfolding right in front of me, so I'm gonna go deal with that. I built a silo seed beside the farmland to store some seeds in, and wondered why none of my followers were tending the fields. It turns out you need an upgraded farmer station for harvesting, so while Biscuit can plant and water crops, I'll have to keep harvesting them. With the help of some followers, we built another stone mine to help relieve the absence of stone, and found I still have to clean poop. Come on people, we have an outhouse now. My next divine inspiration I used to unlock the offering statue. Heading into the temple, I was ready for the next step and about to marry one of my followers, but the power of love was just too strong and my game shut down and crashed. So that's right, we're back to the start of day 15. Apparently it hadn't saved all day, so that's fun. Well, it was pretty much the same. Only difference is today I went out to visit the Spore Grotto. I met with their leader Sozo. He seems like a very put together character. He was after mushrooms. Mushrooms can be used for mind control. Apparently. I handed over some I already had. Obviously that wasn't enough, but I did get a talisman piece. On the way out, I purchased a tarot card to add to the deck for good luck, and left with the goal of collecting 20 more mushrooms for Sozo. And then I was back to following in my own footsteps again. This time, I got to actually build the offering statue. And my sermon today let me get Might of the Devout too. Perfect for a redeeming crusade. Helob has also set up shop nearby. As creepy as it is, it's kinda good to have followers ready to buy if need be. Anyway, on with the crusade. I ran into a new creature by the name of Kimak to start with. She provides a new aspect to the mix called relics. These relics vary in abilities and vary in cooldown time. Some are even used only once, but can give me unique advantages while out in battle. So with a new relic in hand, I set out to finish what I started the other day. After my quick victory, Little Dork summoned me to his realm to inform me of an offering chest I'll find back home. Something I can use to offer things in the name of the one who waits for gold. I mean that like, the one who waits, I'll give it to him in exchange for gold. Not the one who waits for gold. It sounds weird. It's like he's waiting for gold, but he's not, he's giving it to me. Anywho, let's just hope I don't forget about this for the majority of the playthrough.
I'm gonna do what's called a pro gamer move.
As the day was coming to an end, I accepted not one but two new followers, Ulgurn and Fred. Temple time saw me perform another sermon and declare the ritual of resurrection doctrine. And I potted around the base dealing with a few minor tasks. I attempted to give my followers all brand new shelters, but timed it pretty badly, as we had to work into the night to get it done. It was a busy morning in the temple on day 17, a sermon to start us off, a feast ritual as the main course, and for dessert, a little wedding. Thankfully, the power of love wasn't too strong to crash my game this time. It was Fred's request after all, and who am I to say no to love? I then extorted my followers for their gold. Gotta pay for that honeymoon somehow. And I unlocked the Tabernacle, a secondary place for my followers to pray and generate devotion throughout the day. But enough of that boring stuff. Time for another crusade. As you can see, I was hanging on to this fight by a thread. Half a heart and half the health bar to drain. You would think I'd be destined to be martyred once again. But even battered and bruised, I pulled my woolly bootstraps up and got the job done. Hunger was my first priority when arriving home. My cult followers were starving, and I very quickly took care of that. 2 new followers needed indoctrinating, and I welcomed Lefty and, wait for it, Reii. Very creative, I know. Typical temple stuff happened after that, another daily sermon that got me an upgrade which increases my fervor, and I declared the grass eater trait doctrine. Also, the blessings I gave out today were very satisfying. Olgern found me shortly after to ask a favor. He wanted to prank Zeth by making him eat a bowl of poop. To make matters worse, Dougie dropped over dead from the brutal reality that is old age. I thought I could move him away from the group and loot the corpse for a skull necklace, but apparently everyone still didn't like that. His final resting place was to be over by the temple, and that is where I buried him. In better news, I got to unlock cheaper rituals using some divine inspiration. We danced around a bonfire to bring a bit more faith to the cult, and I finally got to build the upgrade for my demon circle, which I should really start using. As the days rolled into day 19, I found myself doing some more minor tasks around the base, just trying to keep everything in order for my followers. Later on, I popped back to the Spore Grotto to hand over some mushrooms I had grown for Sozo, and in return the crazy ant taught me to harness the power of them for a brainwashing ritual. That and a talisman piece. He wanted me to perform the ritual on my own cult, but first I must declare a new doctrine, that being the belief in materialism trait. Okay, now I can brainwash my cult. This actually locks the faith of my cult for a while, meaning I can commit heinous acts of crime against my people and the faith will stay the same. How fun. Sozo was also very pleased and handed over another talisman piece. To round out the day, a divine inspiration allowed me to unlock the healing bay. And yes, I did follow through with Olgern's prank. Zeth did have his bowl of poop, but just like Wanda, it did not end very well. While my followers slept, I set out to Onura once again to chase down Hecate. Right away, I encountered a lonely looking snake called Flinky. Flinky was on his way to Rathaus for some knuckle bones, but I had more important things to do, so maybe later. It's time to crusade. The time had come. Nothing stood between me and Hecate. Just as Leshy's followers had done for him, Hecate's followers made the ultimate sacrifice to turn her into a frog monstrosity. But I was ready, stacked with hearts, armed with a powerful axe, and the Divine Guardian curse at the ready. I started the beatdown on the bishop. This Divine Guardian curse allows me to get in close, pop it for 2 seconds of invincibility, and swing to my heart's content. Things started to spice up as Hecate's health got low, but I popped my Galvar's Charm Relic to increase in size, and it was all over. The heretic's heart was free for me to pick up, the chains released from Hecate's doorway, and I relished in my victory. I won't lie, Little Dork seemed to enjoy watching my tirade a little too much, I think. Nonetheless, my cult was there to celebrate once I got back to base. There's nothing more heartwarming to a ruthless cult leader. However, I can't revel in my victory for too long. The cult still needs looking after, like indoctrinating our newest member, Cowardly, to the cult, preaching the daily sermon which let me unlock 3 new curses to appear on my crusades, declaring the Inspire doctrine, I no longer bless my followers, I inspire them, and using the Heart of a Heretic to unlock the Hunger ability. I may eat a meal myself before a crusade to gain an extra heart or 2. I then did a few things to pass the time, like build some more beds, I cleaned the outhouse, I recruited a dissenting follower on behalf of Olgern's request and then ascended him to the heavens immediately after. Just, casual things like that. Important to note, for a few days you'll notice me playing through the Blood Moon event because I recorded this around Halloween time. With that in mind, it's day 22. Because of this spooky event, I have the ability to perform a Blood Moon ritual, although you need pumpkins, and I don't have pumpkins. I guess I'll just have to extort my followers for gold instead. I hadn't forgotten about Flinky either. Over at the Lonely Shack, I challenged the snake to a game of knucklebones, and look, I'll admit, I didn't have a good first game, and then somehow we drew the second game. Despite a full deck of dice on my end, the third game I actually lost too. And look, things were not looking good. But redemption is something I'm starting to excel at, and you bet it was 4th time's the charm. And Flinky gave me a tarot card for my victory. Or maybe it was just pity. I needed to cool off after those intense games of Knucklebones, so I decided to fish for a while. And to my surprise, I fished up a new relic. The Beak of the Fowler relic, which can instantly refill my fervor. Upon returning to the base later that evening, sickness was spreading through the camp, and I think I found out why. So I put the sick to bed rest and healed Jeff using the medical bay. With a handle on the situation, I mooched around the base tidying things up from the day. I was right to the temple the next day as Faith was heading for rock bottom, and we don't want followers dissenting now, do we? My sermon this morning let me unlock neuromatic weapons for my crusades. I declared the respect your elders trait doctrine for the cult, and put up a ritual of feasting in hopes of raising morale. And hey, it worked like a charm. After unlocking the farm totem with some divine inspiration, I found a new merchant outside the gates to the lands of the old faith. Rakshasa was here to sell me seeds to help feed my flock, so that's good to have nearby. Through the power of friendship, my cult and I opened the 3rd door to Anchor Deep. Before skipping off to slay some more non-believers, I finally remembered to use my demon summoning circle. These little guys will give me little bonuses on our adventures, like extra hearts and collecting drop fervor for me, amongst other things too. So with that, for the first time I headed to Anchor Deep. Even in Anchor Deep, I still had a bone to pick with those wooden dummies. A new biome of course also means new enemies to face, including a Seeker, who you have to play Know You first with in order to break its shield and damage it. I cleared out a few more rooms after that and made it to the end of the dungeon. I then picked up a scared looking creature for indoctrination later on, and swiped up some cauliflower to take home to my forever hungry followers. In the next dungeon, Kalamar took similar strides to his sister, and poor Bobo was plagued with sickness. I was too far to return home now, so I fought my way through the following rooms, only to get stomped by the mini-boss. Bobo made a full recovery thanks to our healing bay, but nothing could heal my lack of pride from my 3rd death. I filled my day with sermons, declaring new doctrines, and mediocre tasks like harvesting berries to start the healing process. The cult was treated to berry bowls thanks to my berry bush harvest before, and they built the harvest totem for me, which accelerates crop growth within its range. To round out the day with some divine inspiration, I upgraded the cult of Panic to Cult 3. My shrine was upgraded, and it's not a bad way to end a day that started so horribly. Day 25 began with a ritual of enrichment, where all my cult members give me lots of gold. I'll be abusing this ritual a lot, just FYI. Yes, it does lose faith, but a well-spoken sermon will balance that out. Also, I unlocked Kudai's Blessing, which will let me re-roll a starting curse or a weapon if I don't like it. Afterwards, I was reluctant, but I bought another follower from Helob. Since I was now swimming in gold, I named my follower Leon. I then built up the last of the farm plots around my farmer station so I could plant pumpkins, as I was curious to see what this blood moon ritual did. While I waited for them to grow, I added a bunch of sleeping shelters to compensate for my ever-growing following, unlocked the upgrade to the farmer station, and declared the belief in absolution trait doctrine. Although while I was crop picking that night, I accidentally happened upon a spider skull. And I'll be frank, I had no idea what to do with it. I do figure it out later, but for now, I think I'll just leave it right here. As if Zeth hasn't been through enough, Olgern wanted to prank the poor guy again, and yes, again with a bowl of poop. You may argue I could have declined the offer, but I'm in it for the faith here, people. The farmer station did get the upgrade I had unlocked, granting my followers the ability to both harvest and plant crops. And finally I built the missionary, which I can use to send followers off to find resources for the cult. A sermon followed after that, and cooking food for my devotees came after that. But it was time to send it back into Anchor Deep and try again. Until I saw Hugh had died, so I quickly returned home, buried him in the graveyard, and then I got distracted queuing materials at the refinery and building another outhouse. But I'm back, and this time, I'm not getting distracted. Once again with half a heart, I managed to defy all odds and take care of the first Anchor Deep mini-boss. It was still dark when I returned home that night, and I was excited to unlock the ritual cooldown upgrade with some divine inspiration. We welcomed Styx to the clan first thing on day 28, because of the sticks in his head. That's why I named him that, because they look like sticks. Anyway, I got Zeth to down a bowl of poop, and I'm happy to say it didn't end as badly as last time. I gave him a feather necklace as a gift, because you know what, I did feel a little bad. Temple time today consisted of another daily sermon, unlocking 3 new curses for my crusades thanks to the faith of my flock, declaring the ritual of the Ocean's Bounty Doctrine, and finally performing the Blood Moon ritual. A blood moon took over the skies outside, and things were certainly looking a lot spookier when I came out of the temple. Eugene, unfortunately, didn't get to see the blood moon for long, as he carked it right in the middle of camp. So I buried him next to the others in the graveyard. I quickly caught on to the fact that the Blood Moon ritual brings back ghosts of past cult members, and by catching them I can acquire special event decorations, and even follower forms. Sure, I may have unlocked the refinery upgrade, but it's not as fun as catching ghosts and getting cool things from them. I couldn't do that forever though, so yeah, I did build the upgrade for the refinery. I began the next day in the temple, preaching the daily sermon, declaring another doctrine, this one for the ritual of enlightenment, which will increase devotion generation speed for a few days, and a ritual of feasting, because I simply couldn't be bothered feeding them myself. In the orange glow of the blood moon, I constructed a few decorations as per Sir Hans's request. Back to Anchor Deep is where I headed next, but I'm going to be honest with you all, it lasted about as long as the first crusade did, because Calamar thought it would be crack up to curse my cult with disease. And also not to mention Biscuit kinda died of old age. I'm gone for 1 second and it all just starts falling apart, I swear. So I quickly returned to camp, I put the sick to bed rest, and I laid my OG follower to rest with the others. To replace Biscuit, I bought another creature from Helob and indoctrinated Spiky to the cult. This morning's temple time included the daily sermon, unlocking the Might of the Devout 3 upgrade, increasing the level of starting weapons again, and deciding my final possessions doctrine will be the devotee trait, which will give me more faith for delivering sermons. With everything somewhat back to normal, I felt confident to return to Anchor Deep and spread some havoc. It's with a heavy heart that I confess I found my spouse Jeff departed from this world once I returned home. Rest in peace, my love. Rest in peace. To the graveyard I built a crypt, that way I can store deceased cult members and not fill up space with body pits everywhere. I took in Kitty, the creature I found in Anchor Deep, to the cult, alongside Bluey. Not quite the cartoon dog, but it'll have to do. Temple time was a busy one today. I took my members for all their worth with a ritual of enrichment, then performed a ritual of enlightenment to get more devotion generated for a couple of days, and made up for that by choosing Rex to be my new lifelong spouse in a wedding ritual. Sorry Jeff, I'd move on pretty quickly. I chose the last Law and Order doctrine to be the tax enforcer ritual, and of course finished it all off with a daily sermon. Right after that, Helob let me purchase another follower, who I ended up naming Finn. Get it? Because he says, never mind. I relieved the flock's hunger by cooking up a few dishes for them to gorge on before getting to work on new farmland as the effects of the blood moon wore off. And after a while, our hard work had paid off. As the day finished up, a divine inspiration let me unlock the Crypt 2 upgrade. I cleaned up the outhouses that were overflowing with poop, and I smashed Clunko and Bop at a game of Knucklebones on the first try. For the first time, it started to rain on day 32, and I made sure my followers enjoyed a good boogie in the downpour. Also, for the first time, I performed the Ocean's Bounty ritual for a follower quest, and we feasted until our hearts were content. Then, to wrap up our time in the temple, I declared the Glory Through Toil ritual as the final work and worship doctrine, and preached a sermon which gave me enough faith to unlock the Might of the Devout 4 upgrade. I quickly popped back over to Pilgrim's Passage to inspect the decrepit lighthouse. The small gathering inside had lost their leader and needed help fixing the light on top of the lighthouse. So I shoved it full of wood, and hey, would you look at that? They even made a little shrine to worship little old me. This act of relighting the lighthouse is an achievement that I had previously, but hey, we can tick it off anyway. And pilgrims now roamed the passage shores, which means more tarot cards to purchase. Speaking of achievements, we got our first one to pop up for catching one of every fish. And truth be told, I kept on fishing all throughout the night. And even into the next day. I thought I might as well make use of the ocean's bounty ritual we performed. Things were pretty steady back at the base. I used a divine inspiration to unlock the prison, you know, just in case, and declared my second to last doctrine for the cult, an afterlife doctrine that unlocks the grave building for followers to leave their devotion. I even upgraded the crypt to allow for more, shall we say, members who are past their due by date. Afterwards, Sir Hans requested I indoctrinate starving followers, so I agreed, and we welcomed Hungry, I know, very clever, and Starving. You're right, I am great with names, thank you for saying so. And rest assured they were fed. Happy with the state of our camp, I decided it was once again time to crusade through Anchor Deep. To jump in quickly, I came across a brand new face by the name of Plimbo. He seems keen to do business, and I'll be sure to visit Smuggler's Sanctuary soon. And strangely, Calamar appeared before me. Not smug like he usually is, but he seemed kind of scared. I'd feel bad, but you ravaged disease through my cult, so you know what? This one's on you, buddy. Anyway, back to the crusade. With time still left in the day, I had time to get stuff done. Today's sermon scored me with enough faith to unlock the Might of the Devout 5 upgrade. My final doctrine was decided also, it being the Substances Encourage trait. And looking through the book, you can see we have unlocked all doctrines, ticking off another achievement I've received already. There was a follower from the crusade to undoctrinate as well. Beaky, welcome to the cult of panning. Then to round off the day, I mucked around sorting out the cult's hunger, buying more seeds from Rakshasa and unlocking the confession booth with a divine inspiration, which I then built next to the missionary. As the night was coming to an end, I ventured out to Smuggler's Sanctuary to visit Plimbo. He explained to me that witnesses take place of fallen bishops, and he wants their eyes in return for payment. A bit disgusting, but okay. Not to mention, Plimbo was really throwing his mother-in-law's name around in the mud. Olgern revealed his deepest and darkest secrets to me in the confessional booth the following day, and for hearing him out, I got the Keeper of Secrets achievement. My sermon overflowed with faith this morning, as such I unlocked the final Might of the Devout upgrade for my future crusades. Also, I upgraded some sleeping bags to shelters, because everyone in my cult deserves sufficient sleeping quarters. Except, you know, maybe Olgern. Poor George met the end of his life in the middle of camps. That was something I also had to take care of. To add some excitement to an otherwise pretty boring day, I obtained the final cult upgrade, which I believe would have popped the devotion achievement for fully upgrading the cult. But of course we already had it. Afterwards, I thought it time to finally end the reign of our third bishop, and I headed out once again to Anchor Deep to chase down Calamar. So I think you know what that means. With the crusade behind me, all that stood between me and Calamar were a bunch of his followers about to sacrifice themselves to turn him into a beast. And wow, would you look at that? I was right. I quickly caught on to Calamar's attack patterns, either he'd lock onto me like a heat-seeking missile for a swipe of his sword, or back off to launch a long-range attack. With that in mind, I found gaps to roll in and do some damage before scampering away to look for another opening. But as his health drained, his persistence grew. He started launching more intense long-range attacks, and well, martyred in cold blood yet again. Lefty had met an unfortunate end while I was away getting stomped on, so I chucked him in the crypt as soon as I was back in the camp. But I was determined to get back to Anchor Deep ASAP, so after indoctrinating Liam into the cult, preaching the daily sermon, and turning a couple of followers into helpful demons, I went back to finish the job. Facing Calamar again was like watching my grandma play bingo. I wasn't leaving until I came out the winner, and I was more determined than ever. I dodged and weaved, landing blows on the foul bishop. Armed with the Divine Guardian curse, I would pop it for a couple of seconds of invincibility, enough time to get in close and whittle down his health bar. Over and over again, I used this tactic to stay close. And well, let's just say my grandma never walks away a loser. I was met with celebrations returning home, showing off my third heart of a heretic to my followers. Somehow feels like winning the Football World Cup. Bobo's lifeless body did take away from the celebrations a wee bit, so I chucked him in the crypt for preservation. But in more good news, I unlocked the missionary upgrade with a divine inspiration, and used the heart in the temple to unlock another crown ability, resurrection. This lets me sacrifice a willing follower once per crusade, if I'm met with an unfortunate end to continue my run. I'm sure I won't need that, right? Right? Also, I had enough faith from my sermon to unlock a few new relics. In the dead of night, I paid a visit to the lighthouse to see how my friends were getting on. Not so good it seems, but I had some crystals on me from Anchor Deep to fix the lighthouse, and in return the lighthouse keeper handed over a new follower form. I stuck around Pilgrim's Passage that morning to purchase the decorations on display at the Pilgrim shop, and afterwards headed back to camp, where I planned and constructed the first upgrade to the missionary building, spent a bit of time preaching in the temple, indoctrinated hops into the group, unlocked the Shrine Flame bundle upgrade, there's now fire beneath my shrine to increase devotion, and I headed back to Darkwood. If you're wondering why, remember Plimbo saying he's after eyes of a witness? Well, if you do, then that's exactly why I'm here. Roll the montage! Horrific scenes awaited me back at camp. A lifeless Olgern on the ground, surrounded in vomit. Kind of on brand for Olgern, since he was so obsessed with the disgusting. But now he can be laid to rest, and I hope he's on the other side, dreaming of Zeth eating endless amounts of poop bowls. To make matters worse, Fred died right after that. I may have to build another crypt soon. But to make up for such a loss, I welcomed Dusty to the cult, purely because he looks like a horse. If you know, you know. Quack was also indoctrinated into the cult of Panning. Man, I am nailing these names. Shortly after, I unlocked even more relics thanks to my faith-collecting sermons, these ones being blessed versions of existing relics. I then carried around the spider skull that night, not an important detail, but I thought I'd include it anyway. Plimbo also got his first Eye of a Witness, and the mother-in-law was slammed yet again. However, for my efforts, I was rewarded with a piece of holy talisman, making a full one. I stuck around Smuggler's Sanctuary for a little while longer to buy all the tarot cards available for purchase. I then popped across to the Spore Grotto to do the exact same thing. I've got a lot of excess gold from my enrichment rituals and a full deck of tarot cards to compile here, people. At temple time today, I used the talisman to unlock another fleece, but immediately put the white one back on because, well, all the other ones are rubbish. I then unlocked the fertilizer silo right after that, and right after that, I spent a bit of coin on a new follower from Helob, and we indoctrinated Falcon to our cause. Then to round out the day, I made use of the missionary to send Sir Hans on a trek into the lands of the old faith to look for bones for me. I caught Finn not pooping in the outhouse later, and I'm thinking that may be grounds for sacrifice, but I'll let him off just this once. Surprise, we're back crusading through Anura again. This time we were on our way to slay a witness for one of its precious eyes. And of course I made sure to pick a path with all the goodies. Why fight all the non-believers when I could just get free stone? However, I knocked down the statue statue of Hecate, and suddenly a portal appeared. I thought it would take me straight to the witness. But oh hey, look at that. Surprise, surprise, it didn't take me to the witness. We've seen this one before, so I'll just skip to the good part. But at least I now know an easy way to face the bishops again. I found Zeth passed away when I got back to base. Maybe now he can join Ulgurn and get some justice up there in heaven. Or hell. They're probably both in hell. After unlocking the janitor station from the shrine, I just spent a lot of the night rejigging the farmland. The cult got behind my farming endeavors and helped with the building, but as you can see, I moved it all to the back left corner of the camp where there's lots of room for farming. And I added an additional farmer station to the farmland, so I can keep up with demands as my cult continues to grow. Temple time today consisted of taking everyone's gold, a feast to quell the hunger since I had just redone the whole farming area, and had nothing left to feed my flock with, and unlocking the damned relics with faith from my sermon, which I guess are the opposite of blessed relics. Then after purchasing an elderly follower from Helob for absolutely no cost at all, I headed back out to Anura. This time I did make it all the way to the right monster to fight. The witness was no match for a powerful lamb such as myself, and I had that eye in my possession at no time at all. I returned home where I unlocked the propaganda speakers with some divine inspiration, and welcomed Darren, Thor, Stickhead, Scruffy, and G-Man all to the cult. As my followers were in slumber that night, I prepared a feast for them for breakfast, because I'm the kind of cult leader that goes above and beyond for my members. Day 45 was a day I spent pottering around camp, building propaganda speakers to increase work speed, inspiring my flock with a cute little dance, refilling my seed silos, unlocking the trap scarecrow with divine inspiration, spending time in my temple with my flock, you know, just the usual culty kind of things. I also built a statue in Sozo's name behind the missionary, which Sozo rewarded me with his final piece of a holy talisman. He wasn't looking too good though, I'll admit, so I left Sozo to it and paid Plimbo a visit to hand over the second eye of a witness, and received another holy talisman piece. Back at camp and under the stars, I spruced up the temple by moving it back a bit to fit in a new mosaic path, alongside the decorations beside it. You can take me away from Stardew Valley, but you'll never take the decorator from Poxzeel. As for day 46, well, it started out pretty mellow. All I managed to do was unlock the Shrine Flame 2 upgrade. I needed to inject a bit of energy into the day, and to do that, the cult and I used the power of friendship to open up the fourth and final door into the lands of the Old Faith, and I ran headfirst into my first crusade through the Silk Cradle. Here in the Silk Cradle, the common enemies are nasty looking spiders, and weirdly these blue and red god eye enemies? It was a pretty standard first dungeon, so I quickly moved on to see Kemak for a relic and a tarot card to add to my deck. After that I got to harvest some beetroot, which I'm sure I can use back at camp to cook some delicious meals. While running around the final dungeon, Shimura popped in for a quick visit. Being the most diabolical bishop of them all, Shimura turned one of my own followers against me, and I was forced to slay Quack in cold blood. I took my revenge out on the mini-boss waiting for me at the end with a spam of my Divine Blast curse. I can't make up for getting rid of Quack, but I can indoctrinate Spooderman to the cause in his place. Temple time today included a ritual of enrichment, a feasting ritual, a brainwashing ritual to make sure my faith doesn't get that low again, and to finish it all off, a sermon. Afterwards, I took to the confession booth to hear from Sir Hans, who made it back from his mission safely, obviously. I just couldn't find when he got back, but he made it back a-okay. So I sent him off to do it again. With not a lot left to do around camp, I took off once again to the Silk Cradle to do some crusading. I quickly came across this statue tree thing telling me to visit a new area called Midas's Cave, so I'll add that to my to-do list. Continuing onwards, I ran into Shimura once again in the final dungeon. I wasn't so stubborn this time, and between refusing and bowing, I bowed to the bishop as so not to upset them. Shimura may have had some choice words about it, but that wouldn't stop me from chasing them down and taking their pulsating heart. Anyway, I got pretty close to death myself shortly after while fighting the Crusade mini-boss. I was able to take it out from afar, and 3 crusades was all that was left between me and the final bishop. Little Dork wasn't anywhere to be seen in the realm beyond. Instead, I was introduced to .. This entity told me if I continued to ripple and warp the ether of this world, then we would be sure to meet again. What is blood yapping about, am I right?
Oh, brother! brother, this guy stinks!
Sorry about that, I'm just trying to keep up with the lingo. Unfortunately, I had to lay 2 followers to rest as the day turned to night. Both Darren and Cowardly had left this world, and yeah, there was a lot of vomit to clean up. On a lighter note, I did unlock the Grand Shelter. To remedy such a loss, I replaced those 2 with 2 new members, Pinky and Bubbles. A lot of today was filled with menial tasks, like assembling the first lot of many grand shelters. However, I did pop over to Midas's cave for the first time, and was introduced to the famous starfish himself, Midas. In the cave, there are a few extras for me. First off, this well, that to activate I need to donate 10 gold bars to. But once it's open I can give it gold, and hope that when I come back I'll be returned with more. And this shrine which requires gold to receive devotion. And lastly, I can sacrifice followers. We'll worry about that later. For now, I headed back home where I unlocked the shared shelter building, added another refinery to my workyard, and I fed my followers. Actually, I added another refinery to that, making the total 3, so that I can make each wooden plank, stone blocks, and gold bars all separately and at the same time. It's all about efficiency over here at the Cult of Panning. About halfway through the day, the effects of the brainwashing ritual wore off, and some of my followers weren't doing so well. Luckily, we have a healing bay to help with that. I then had to build another crypt on account of hungry dying. The other one filled up very quickly, and then we danced around a bonfire and feasted to our heart's content. I'll admit the camp was looking pretty well maintained the morning of day 51, so I was happy to leave them be for a bit while I went running around on another crusade. So I summoned my demons in the demonic summoning circle and headed out to the lands of the old faith. Faith was at rock bottom when I returned to camp that night, and not surprising since I had to slay 2 of my own followers, no thanks to that wonderful Bishop Shimura. How shall I restore Faith back to my cult, you may ask? By sacrificing my spouse Rex, of course. Bye bye my little Rexy poo. And then I married Finn. Like I said, I move on quickly. Also, Sir Hans made it back safely from his mission, and with him he brought back so many bones. I would hate to think how he got them. A lot of today was taken up moving the shelters around to make it a little bit more organized. I even added stone and gold paths in this cool pattern under them, because decoration is key. It may have taken a couple of tries, but I did challenge Shrummy and Knucklebones, and winning against Shrummy would have unlocked the Master of Chance achievement for beating all Knucklebone opponents, but your boys already got it. In preparation for the final crusade, I fed my flock to ensure no starvation occurred while I was gone, and with my demons at the ready, I headed out to the Silk Cradle. Shimura's followers were no different to those of the others. A sacrifice was made, and in front of me stood Shimura in the form of one giant scary ass looking spider. But I was a powerful lamb. Every attack that landed on that foul spider did damage, and it did a lot of it. While it was spitting bombs out over the room, it gave me a huge chance to get in close and do some real damage. I then used my relic to get rid of the excess enemies around the room, and I did to that bishop what it made me do to my own followers. Justice at last. In the realm beyond, Little Dork informed me that the time to free him was now, and that the red crown shall be returned to its rightful bearer. But as he yabbered on, I got the feeling that I didn't want to give up the crown just yet. Alas, he told me to open the final gate so I could go and lay my life down for him. Before that can happen though, I returned home a hero one final time, and spent the rest of the day mooching around camp, cleaning up after being away. And look, I get that my followers, sometimes want to be rebellious, but pooping right beside the outhouse is just all new levels of petty. The Heretic Heart gave me my last crown ability called the Darkness Within. Basically, it gives me a deceased heart at the start of each run, and if you get hit with a deceased heart, then it damages all the enemies on the screen. To celebrate my victory against all 4 bishops, I paid the fisherman a visit to purchase a whole load of fish that I could use back at camp to make delicious meals for all of my followers. That night I popped by Midas's cave to hand over 10 gold bars for payment to open the well up for use. I thought I'd use it once just to humor myself. There's nothing like starting your day by building a morgue for your graveyard, now is there? Today was all about preparation, feeding my flock of followers, readying my demons for the final boss, although I'm not too sure if I can have demons, but I did it anyway. I made my way to the final gate, the gateway, and headed over to summon a portal. My cult and I, once again through the power of friendship, performed the ritual that would send me to the realm beyond, and suddenly I was there. I chose a trusty zealous dagger as my weapon, the Oath of the Crown melee attack as my curse, and I made my way towards the one who waits. He wanted me to relinquish the crown, imprisoning my cult to instill some sense of fear from me. With the option to refuse or accept sacrifice, I refused. I'd worked too hard to give it up now. Now it was time to deal with the repercussions. Baal stepped up first, and he would send out non-believers to attack me, or even crazier, spikes that would track onto me. But Baal was no match for a lamb that just refused to be sacrificed, and I finished him off having only taken 1 hit of damage. Next up was Aim. Aim had some crazy long range attacks, and I very quickly found that out, but I locked in on him and I found gaps to attack. He also sent out spike attacks, but I found the rhythm and ways to land a few jabs before running out of there. Aim shortly followed his brother's footsteps. Little Dork came to play next, and he didn't look too happy about it. When it seemed like Little Dork had lost it all and the lamb was about to put this little twerp in the ground, we go to phase 2. Well, look how the tables have turned now. I actually decided to spare the one who waits, and that's because I need him for an achievement if I'm being completely honest. And well, that's the game finished. Thanks for watching, everyone. No, of course that's not the end. With the main story now finished, I still had a few achievements left to go. So from here on out, it's Achievement Cleanup is the part of the video where I now focus heavily on getting the last achievements I need for that juicy 100%. I'll try not to gloss over any new stuff, like the fact that Kushima has now taken over the Realm Beyond's gate and has become a vendor, but gameplay wise everything's pretty similar. So with that in mind, let's dive into the Achievement Cleanup. One achievement I'm chasing right now is the Leader of Leader achievement to indoctrinate all 5 bishops into your cult. You'll notice that Kushima patriarch has given me the task to set every bishop free. The only thing is to open the gates back again to Darkwood, Enora, Anchordeep and Silk Cradle is you need to sacrifice a follower. So that's fun. Also we gave the name Frank. Thank goodness, I didn't want to say ever again. Now for every boss we slay we get god tiers. God tiers can be given to Frank for a chance to either get a piece of a holy talisman, a follower skin, a necklace, or a forgotten commandment stone. Eventually I did make it to Leshy. This fight was like the first one on steroids. With only half a heart to my name when he was defeated, I pulled the victory with the skin of my teeth, and I indoctrinated the second bishop to my cult. The first one was Little Dork, of course. A while after that I was introduced to Purgatory, a dungeon crawler that increasingly gets harder every time you enter. It can be accessed only once per day, and time does halt in Purgatory. Essentially you fight your way through waves of enemies from Darkwood all the way to Silk Cradle, collecting god tier fragments along the way, which will progress towards a full god tier at the end of each run. This isn't too important, but I spent a lot of day 65 adding paths around my camp, like forest paths to the temple area, stone paths to the workyard, and hay paths around the outhouses. I just wanted to share the work that I'm proud of. Every time I indoctrinate a bishop, they will ask me to venture back out into the land they once ruled and find their missing attribute. For example, for Leshy it was his eye. And yes, they are relics, so it's important I collect them all so I can get the Relics of the Old Faith achievement for collecting all the relics. It was sad to see Sir Hans dissenting, so I put him up for sacrifice. But hey, that's one less follower for the achievement. Not a lot happened on Funny Number Day. I just wanted to include it. Actually, I did purchase a couple of tarot cards from Midas's cave, so there's that. Speaking of Midas, I sacrificed 4 followers to turn into gold statues for him, and for such an act I received my 4 pieces of holy talisman. I stumbled across a couple of relics on day 71, one for tickling Plimbo's fish friend, and the other I found hiding behind the lighthouse over in Pilgrim's Passage. It was on day 73 I had finally made it back to Hecate to face her one last time. Even though she tried pulling out all the stops, that still couldn't stop the inevitable, and I welcomed Hecate to the cult with warm and embracing arms. I was off on another relic hunt shortly after, this time back to Enora to find Hecate's throat. I did find it, and I added it to my relic collection. I felt a little icky taking this one. On my first run back in Anchordeep, I happened to run into a witness on my way to the final mini-boss. It seems I had completely forgotten to get the final 2 eyes for Plimbo, but I'm glad I could still get them. And right outside the boss room, Midas thought it would be funny to steal my gold. I'll get you back for that, you slimy little starfish. 1, 2, skip a few, it's day 83. Trust me, not a lot happened in between, just regular old cult stuff and crusading my way back to this fight. I took a real beating fighting Calamar this time around, so much so that I had to rely on the Resurrection Crown ability just to keep me in it. But I didn't waste a second chance. With a gap to attack, I slashed down the 3rd bishop, and we added the 4th bishop to my cult. At Calamar's request back to Anchordeep I went to search for his ear. I found it pretty quickly, adding another relic to my collection. I shouldn't have gone back to the Spore Grotto, but I did, because I think Sozo found out what happens when you go too far with mushrooms. I was once again met with a witness upon my first crusade back in Silk Cradle. I'm sure Plimbo will be over the moon to receive his final eye though. Genuinely, day 88 was spent back at camp decorating again. I'm leaving this in because again I think I did a really good job and I'm proud to say that. The dirt paths under the farmland worked out really well, and I kinda made this town square area with the missionary and confession booth and the medical bay around this middle pond with all the statues for slaying the bishops. Props to me because my camp was looking magazine cover worthy. I was awarded my final tarot card from Ratu for completing a challenge he set out for me during this crusade, which would have unlocked the full deck achievement, but I already had it. I found myself crusading through Silk Cradle again on day 92. I encountered Midas along the way and the starfish thought it'd be crack up to take my gold again. I got my revenge and in doing so I popped the shakedown achievement for getting my gold back. The following day, in the dead of night, I wandered over to Pilgrim's Passage. Plimbo then asked me to round up another assortment of witness eyes, and I begrudgingly agreed. On the pier nearby, I peered out into the darkness, and I met with a fox, who reminded me of death. All he wanted was a fish. So I gave him one, and in return I got a piece of holy talisman. Let's cross our fingers and hope his demands stay relatively ethical. After many days spent crusading, I was finally back to the last Bishop Shimura. No, I didn't have to use my resurrection ability this time, but I'll tell you what, I didn't leave much room for error right at the end. Once again, finishing the battle with only half a heart. Hey, what can I say? I like to keep things interesting. I then found Death again, this time in Pilgrim's Passage. His demands did not stay ethical. This time he asked me to sacrifice a follower. But I do need those pieces of holy talismans, so Uma had to take one for the team. It was also that night I indoctrinated Shimura into the Red Crown cult, and we finally ticked off the Leader of Leaders achievement. Shimura came into the cult dissenting, so I built a prison, and it's here you'll stay until you learn to love me. After a final talk with Frank, he said my tasks are done. Frank doesn't care what I do next. I must fulfill the role of a god, I think it said. I was rewarded with a little dork statue and the credits rolled once more. The end. Yeah, I got you again, didn't I? We're still not finished quite yet. That night, Death made me sacrifice either 2 of my followers or half a heart. I had no problem sending 2 of them off for a piece of holy talisman. The 4th encounter with Death had me choose whether or not to sacrifice my own mentor, Reii. And look, I'm not proud of what I did next. Safe to say, I took that follower skin, and I took the piece of holy talisman, and I did not look back. Later that day, I sacrificed a follower who was wearing a light necklace I had gotten from Frank, and instead of disappearing, Belle turned up and replaced the follower I had just tried to sacrifice. If that name kind of rings a bell, well, it's one of the brothers from the final showdown with the one who waits. I then paid a visit to the lonely shack that night to see if Reii was truly gone, and yeah, I can confirm he was definitely gone. Shimura was finally cooperating with me, and now with a level head, asked me to venture one last time to Silk Cradle to find its skull. I did find Shimura's skull and reluctantly added it to the rest of my relics, but at least I don't have to chase down any more bishop parts. Day 100 is a huge milestone. I celebrated by letting someone else cook my followers delicious meals. I'm a god now. I've got bigger things to worry about, thank you very much. I also constructed a shrine to Little Dork, so every time he walks past it, he's reminded of the power he once had, and how he'll never have it again. The next day, I sacrificed a follower wearing the dark necklace I had gotten from Frank, and lo and behold, the other brother Aim popped out from the underworld in place of my follower. There's an achievement to get with these 2 brothers, and to do so, I must first turn them both into demons and start a crusade to find my way to Fornius' shop. By reuniting the brothers with their mother, we received 2 relics, Blessed Tears of a Vengeful Father, and the Damned Tears of a Merciful Mother relic, and the True Love Found achievement. Then for Plimbo's sake, and of course for more holy talisman pieces, I crusaded back into each biome, slaying the witnesses I had found at the end of each one. Quick sidetrack, the last relic to get was found after harvesting follower meat. Poor kitty got sliced up in broad daylight, but finding the last relic and getting the relics of the Old Faith achievement was well worth it. I was collecting up the witnesses' eyes so that I could take them back to Plimbo all at once, and it took a while, but eventually I got all 4 after a few days. And it was on day 108 that they all got handed over to Plimbo, and I received all 4 talisman pieces at once. Now please don't ask me to do that again, I can't be bothered doing that again. I started my Rowan Purgatory achievement on day 110. To get said achievement, you have to complete a Purgatory run every day for 6 days in a row with the same fleece, either in boss run or dungeon run mode. I chose the white fleece as per usual and decided to run the dungeon side of Purgatory, because truth be told, that's just the one I chose. There was zero thought behind it. The first run was pretty standard, just fight your way through a dungeon in each biome. As you progress down the row, each time it gets a little bit more complicated. On my 3rd run, I started to encounter boss fights with the bishops as things started to heat up, and through sheer luck and the Divine Guardian curse, I popped the achievement Order, which I got from beating Leshy without taking damage. With the God Tears, I headed to Frank and got the last talisman piece, and not even 2 minutes later, I popped the achievement Transmute for unlocking all the fleeces. Day 4 into my Purgatory run saw me fly past Leshy and into Anchor Deep this time. It finished with Hecate this time, and unfortunately I didn't get away with a no-hit run. I made up for that however with my final sacrifice. There's actually no way to track how many you've sacrificed unless you're just yourself keeping count. So I was both surprised and happy to see the Weigher of Souls achievement. Back to Purgatory I went on day 114. I rolled right through all of the dungeons and boss fights today. Divine Guardian is honestly honestly my all-time favorite curse, because look at how quickly I just breezed past Kalamar here. And I didn't take a single hit, so I popped the Cure achievement. So here we are, final day in Purgatory, and I am feeling good. The final run takes you through every biome, pits you against every bishop in the game, and gives you all the tools in hopes that you can make it through to the end. The end, of course, being Baal, Aim, and the one who waits. Having done this already and feeling powerful beyond any lamb has felt before, the final boss fight was pretty much a cakewalk. And for making it through a full row of Purgatory, we finally unlocked the Slayer of Souls achievement. Now, unfortunately, the footage for days 116 and 117 got corrupted, which is a shame because we did end up finding the last follower skin to unlock the full flock achievement. So you are just gonna have to take my word for it that I got it. So with only 2 achievements left, it was time to grind. Hecate was finally slain without taking damage on day 120, and for doing so we popped the Sate achievement. All that was left to do was to do the exact same to Shimura. All I had to do was defeat this boss without taking damage. But oh my god, this achievement was my mountain, and it was a damn hard climb. Come on, come on. Oh, I'm so close. Yes! Oh, yes, we did it! So on day 123, we achieved the impossible. The achievement Peace popped up, and with it the achievement Godhood. No longer a servant, no less than a god, for unlocking all the achievements. Before I call it quits, I took a bit of time to look around the camp, to embrace the work and effort that went into getting to where we are now. Not to mention how stunning the camp looks too. To think 123 days ago we were a lamb out for slaughter, and after slaying bishops and taking control of our own destiny, the cult of Panning is a cult that creatures and gods will talk about for eons after I'm gone. That 100% was finally mine, and it felt great. So there you have it. We managed to 100% Cult of the Lamb, and here is the proof to prove that. Playing this game has been an absolute treat. I wanted to try something new with the 100% video compared to the normal 100 days videos, so if you did enjoy this new kind of video, then you can let me know by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and letting me know down in the comments. Maybe you could even suggest a game for the next 100% video. That being said, as always, you're all wonderful people, so have a wonderful day. And thanks for watching.